When you're pruning European elderberry, the same basic principles apply as with American elderberry. The main thing you need to know is that the more buds that you leave behind, the more more shoots there will be. Each shoot will have a flower, and the more flowers, the more fruit, and the more fruit the plant produces, the less energy it will have to put towards growing strong branches to renew the plant so that it can bear lots of good fruit the next year. You can see on this field that I have trained all my European elderberry into a single trunk. You don't have to do this, but this is just how I wanted to do it. Have a little crush on Europe, so this is what I did. Let's talk about how to prune a beautiful bush like this. The first thing you do when you're getting started is remove last year's bird's nest. Remove last year's bird's nest. As you can see, birds love building their nest in the center of a European elderberry. This kind of birds, like whether cedar waxwings or robins, they don't use their nest twice. They'll build a brand new nest. So this is a 1-year-old nest. Don't worry, I'm not harming any birds' ability to make and enjoy their nests. So I'm just going to evaluate this plant before I start pruning. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, how many skeletal branches did I leave last time? I call this a skeletal branch. It is 1 year old, and each one of its buds has turned into 1 or 2 or 3 different shoots. Each shoot had a blossom and some fruit, and we need to renew this so that every year it can do the same thing over and over. So the big strong shoots from last year, they'll be the skeletal branches for next year. And let's see, how many skeletal branches did we leave last year? We left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And look at that. It still produced just bushy, strong growth. So 5 was definitely not too many. So now we can get in here and actually just remove last year's skeletal branches. And you know what? I'm going to cut it as close to flush as I can because I want to leave as, well, one thing, I don't want this mess here. Look at this mess. It's getting hard to fit in there with the pruner. The other thing is, if you leave it a little bit short, like if I left it short there, there'd be an extra bud down here, and I'm trying to limit the number of buds so that you can keep things in check and we don't have an imbalance, too much vegetative growth. Well, if you have too much vegetative growth, if you have many shoots originating out of here, they'll actually all be too small, and not one single one of them will be big enough to make a nice skeletal branch. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of any that are just too small. I always say if it's too small to make a cutting, it's too small to be a skeletal branch. Get rid of some of these small ones. That one's pretty small. Well, actually, I'm going to make a plan before I move. So how am I going to make my plan? Okay, branches that lean out from the center, those are good because when they get weighed down with fruit over the season, they'll bend down, they'll make space in the middle so we can have good, strong growth in the middle for next year's branches. So this one leans out, that one I already showed you leaned out, this one leans out. But here we have a branch that actually crosses over the center even, and it's almost totally straight. So we're gonna get rid of that one, and that one. They're all a little bit too straight, and that one. So like I said before, we're gonna cut it as close to the base as possible. And this one's kind of redundant. It's going the same direction as that other one, so let's get rid of it. Oh, I almost forgot this big one right up the middle. That's no good. We don't want that. How am I going to get in there? I'm going to have to come over to this side. There we go. Okay, next thing you need to know is when they have these little side branches, they recommend trimming them down to 1 bud. That's again to limit the amount of flowers it's going to have so that you have more strong growth to create next year's skeletal branches. If your bush is not very abundant, you could cut them right off, or I guess abundant's not the right word, but vigorous. And then the other thing you can do is trim the skinny stuff off the end. That will prevent it from making a whole bunch of tiny flowers. Good rule of thumb with younger plants is if the skeletal branch is less than a meter, cut half of it off. If it's less than a meter and a half, cut 1/3 of it off. And if it's bigger than a meter and a half, you don't really have to worry about it. But you know, you can also, yeah, you can. You do have to just keep in mind how vigorous is my plant. How big are these skeletal branches that I left behind? Do we need to be a tiny bit more heavy pruning or a tiny bit less? Anyway, so this is what the final product looks like. Oh, I'm glad I chose this bush as my example. It's just such a beautiful bush. You'll all think that I grow amazing European elderberry. This is one of my nicer ones. So yeah, the only criticism that I did want to point out, my self-criticism, when I was devising my plan, I could have figured out a way to leave my 5 skeletal branches and gotten rid of this knob in the middle. Because every year, these are going to get fatter and fatter. And then pretty soon it's going to be hard to get in there with a saw to get rid of it. Remember, we're trying to limit the amount of buds, right? So we cut everything flush. And yeah, at the base of each one of these cuts, there's a little bud there. You know, that's a primary bud. But there's a secondary bud probably there. Oh, we're out of focus. Probably there. This one has, you know, a primary bud there, but there could be a whole bunch of secondary and tertiary buds that you're not even thinking of. Then there's a whole bunch up there. So the fact, I like to call these fists, where you have been pruning it back a bunch of times and it's just like a little ball of where shoots can come out of. I've kind of left 3 fists, you know, and that could mean a lot of branches coming out of there next year. And if too many branches come out, then they'll all end up being tiny and I won't have any nice big ones. Oh, beautiful branch, beautiful blue sky. Before I forget, I just wanted to mention these bushes on this field were planted in 2021. It's 2025 right now, so they've had 4 growing seasons. And yeah, that's a nice big one. That one's not so big. There's some babies. There's a brand new one. Not every plant, though, is going to have the same level of vigor. This one's a little bit small, so it got 3. And they're all fairly shortened. This one got 4. It was just kind of awkward to find 3 good ones. So there's 4 that I shortened quite short here. And look at this guy. It's pretty small. Maybe it's a baby. It's probably a young one. But pruned it down to 2, and then I cut those in half because they were under a meter. This was pretty short. So here we are. It's mid-June now. I thought I would return, take a little clip, and show you how they look. They're flowering and looking good. I'm really happy about how they turned out. That being said, I'm not European, and I've only gathered this information from little scraps here and there. So if I've demonstrated anything incorrectly or left anything out, please let me know. I would love to learn more.